Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com, and Scott Reynolds is here with me on a Monday. And the draft, Scott, it's getting closer, and the discussions are ramping up between the Pewter Report staff. Who is this team going to select? What positions are they going to be interested in? It's all up in the air. You tried to clarify it as best you could within the most recent pewterreport.com 7-round mock drafts. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the defensive backfield of this team and what we can expect in this draft, if anything, from the Bucs in terms of drafting corners, safeties, etc. And we're also going to get into our running back evaluations a little bit of this class. You and I have watched a lot of these guys. We see a lot of Bucs fits. We're going to talk through who we like, who we don't like, and how much we like them.
Running backs. I'm all about it, John. You know that.
That's true. Your flow's coming out, dude. You got your hair's getting longer. What is this?
Yeah, it is. It's a kind of a little bit of like a Blaine Gabbert inspiration. You know, got the mullet coming back a little bit. So
is that what he? Is that what it's that was inspired it once they re-signed him? You were like, okay, not getting a haircut again.
I'm all in. You know, that's the thing. So
I have to be.
Blaine train all aboard.
That's right. Today's show, Scott, is going to be a fun one because once you and I get into draft mode, like completely, which, you've been in for probably longer than me this year because of all the other stuff going on with our content, obviously. But now that I feel like I am kind of fully engaged in draft mode a little bit, we always have some good discussions about these prospects. And I know that the 7-round mock draft was you went back and forth with this one, especially what you wanted to do, what positions you wanted to address. And I think you and I can, especially now that some of the running backs are back in the fold, and if Gronkowski were to make a decision or Stu were to make a decision, we would probably and come back. We would probably look at this draft and say this might be the hardest Bucs mock to figure out. Last year wasn't as hard because there was only a couple positions that they even could have legitimately fit someone onto the roster at. That's how ridiculous it was at other positions.
Well, and also
we knew it was going to be an edge defender. We thought it was.
We knew that we nailed the first 2 picks, which it's hard to do. It really is because when you're talking about
32.
Exactly. We're talking about like a late first-round pick, especially. But people think, oh well, the Bucs' best bets. It's like you guys you're picking 2 players at a position. That's kind of easy. It really isn't because there's a lot of strategy that goes into this. Because if we pick. Like, let's say if we pick a defensive tackle in the rounds 1 through 3, right, and they end up picking somebody on day 3, or for example, if we pick the wrong guy early, then they're not going to pick one later. So it's a fun challenge. What we're trying to do is like, hey, these are guys that we feel based upon our scouting and based upon our sources, our intel. These are the guys that are the Buccaneers targets, the guys that fit what the Buccaneers want to do. And every once in a while, they throw us a curveball, right? We didn't see Keyshawn Vaughn coming.
Nope.
And maybe we are right about that. We'll see. But there's been others, right? MJ Stewart, who was drafted ahead of Carlton Davis in the second round. You knew they needed a cornerback back in 2018, but Carlton Davis made sense. But MJ Stewart, a lot of people had him as a 4th or 5th round pick. They drafted him in the 2nd round. So, Jason Light, the Bucs front office, John, they're not bulletproof when it comes to bad decisions.
No,
they've made some, but what we try to do with our mock draft is really just kind of put the names out there that we feel that could be Buccaneer targets, Buccaneer interests, and really familiarize Buccaneer fans with those players.
Right. And that's the key to all of this is trying to get as close to being right about as many as we can. And at the end of the day, we're not going to get all of them right. And there's been years we didn't get any of them right. I think the years I've been here with you, I think we've gotten at least something. But last year's a good one, obviously. And this year it'll be really tough. It's already testing us. And so we'll cram as much as we can and try and figure out as much as we can leading up to the draft. But we are still this 7th round mock draft that we just recently did is really, the penultimate one, right? There's going to be one more right before the draft. That'll be kind of our official mock draft. And that will include some of our Bucs best bets, but our Bucs best bets will also be rolling out for people who don't remember or are new to Pewter Report. What we'll have is starting next Monday. So a week from today, we'll have the first Bucs best bets drop. And so what that'll be is it'll be basically you have a positional preview of kind of, you'll see where the Bucs are currently at. Let's say it'll be quarterbacks on Monday.
Right.
So where they're at quarterback on the roster right now, what we can expect going into the draft. Then there'll be basically a list of, I think we've got 15 quarterbacks on there now, and it'll give you just a paragraph on each of these players, give you a little snapshot of them, height, weight, 40s, all that kind of stuff for a lot of the top quarterbacks in the class. And then at the end of that, there'll be a Bucs best bet for rounds 1 through 3 and rounds 4 through 7. So basically we give you an early draft and a late draft best bet as to if the Bucs took a quarterback, which we don't expect them to really at all, especially early. But if the Bucs took a quarterback, who would be the most likely quarterback that they would take in the first 3 rounds of the draft, and then in the last 4 rounds of the draft? We give you 2 names at each position. So 24 total players make the Bucs best bets list. Wait, is that right? Because how many position groups?
We have 11 actually, because we do centers and guards together. Okay. So we have 11. Yeah.
Oh, we do centers and guards together. So we make it even harder for ourselves. Not this year, because obviously won't be a center, but Yeah. Okay.
Well, and John,
so 22 players.
Right. The reason why we do this again is because sometimes the team throws us curveballs. We actually had back in 2013, we had Mike Glennon as a Bucs best bet at quarterback, and the team had Josh Freeman, they were. Exactly. They were not expected. Right, they were not expected to draft a quarterback, but yet they did. So that's why we do this exercise is just in case the team wants to go in a different direction than the quote unquote experts like ourselves and draft prognosticators don't really foresee them taking. We have some of those bases covered, and then some years, we luck out, or maybe we could just get really good intel in when was it?
Josh Freeman year?
Yeah, 2009. We had Freeman, and we nailed both of the Bucs' best bets. They doubled up on wide receiver. We had Aurelius Ben from Illinois in the first pick at wide receiver, and then on the rounds 4 through 7, we had Mike Williams from Syracuse. He was drafted in the 4th round. So every once in a while, we hit a doubleheader.
Yeah, we're getting dangerously close to the fans not being able to pat us in the back because our hands are in the way here. But listen, we like this stuff. This is what we're into. So let's get into this 7-round mock draft a little bit, Scott, and we'll move through the show progression for today. But this 7-round mock draft, Travis Jones right off the bat, defensive tackle. This was a tough one for you. I know you went back and forth. You and I have gone back and forth about Jones. It's not really what Bruce Arians described at the combine of what they were looking for. I think he's in cahoots with Jason Light on that description. I think they would rather a player more similar in style to a Devontae Wyatt. Jones has some pass rush ability. He played UConn. Obviously, they have been an awful team, but he really stood out even against Clemson. I know Clemson's offensive line was trash this past year. They were brutally bad, but he tossed them around, and that's what you want to see from a guy playing from UConn. So there's a lot to like. I don't know how much of an explosive upfield penetrator he is. My biggest concern with Jones is that he is just pretty slow off the ball, and I'm not sure how much that gets fixed at the next level. Maybe they tweak his stance, but it does seem like there's some upside limitations to him, even though he probably comes in the NFL as a pretty solid player right away.
Yeah. And I think the thinking on this one, and again, this is where the strategy has to come into play. This is not fantasy football. This is not Madden where you can manipulate certain things, or even like a mock draft simulator per se. This is assuming that Devontae Wyatt is off the board, right? So that's the assumption that we made here. And really there's about 4 defensive tackles in this draft class that I think could interest the Buccaneers. Devontae Wyatt's one of them, and then I think the upper echelon guy. I don't think they're interested in Jordan Davis, John. I think you'll agree with me on that. Probably not an ideal Buccaneer fit. They're looking for people that can.
They probably like him, just not next to Vea.
Correct. Yeah, he's kind of the same guy. They're looking for people that can affect the quarterback and all that. And while I understand that's not really what Travis Jones is per se. What he is he's another version of Ndamukong Suh. And obviously Suh is kind of a Buccaneer fit, right? He's been a decent pass rush producer, 6 sacks in each of the last 2 seasons. It's not his forte. It really is stopping the run. And what you have in this guy, 6'4", 325, 330 pounds, is just brute force. He is that type of stop the run first, help you a little bit in the pass rush game. And the Buccaneers, they've gotten by with using Jason Pierre-Paul inside when he was healthy as that nickel rusher, right? Either next to Suh or next to Vea, but one of those defensive tackles comes out. And we've talked about this team could draft a player like Boye Mafe at 27, right? That was another name in contention there, because even though they've drafted an edge player, John, having another big body, and this guy's 265 pounds, same size, not as tall, maybe not as long as Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but another guy that could kick inside in that nickel rush package, because there really aren't too many guys like Devontae Wyatt this year that are that ideal classic 3 technique, one gap penetrating pass rusher type at defensive tackle. So that was kind of the thinking there, is they need a defensive tackle. Sue is not re-signed yet. They have not re-signed Steve McClendon. They're going to have to get some bodies. Even if Sue comes back, it's going to be for 1 year. There's still going to be an emphasis on stuffing the run in Ty Bowles' defense. Always will be. Yeah. That's where Jones can help this team. He's got enough quickness. It's not like this is a 5'1" guy. He's ran a 4.92 at the combine. I think he's a work in progress. He might be a guy that could get you 4 to 5 sacks per season at the NFL level.
This is a pick that would be, everybody wants to be, we love it or we hate it. This would be a pick I would be like right down the middle on, to be honest. Like I like Travis Jones. I think he's a good player. I think maybe he could develop a few more moves and potentially be better. I don't really see him being like an impact player in terms of just like a big difference maker. He's a helpful body. He's a guy that's going to probably, play in rotation with Golston and with other guys that, I think it's fine. I don't think it necessarily raises the window for this year like somebody that's more explosive might. But I don't know. To me, Scott, this is a fine pick, and I could see it happening. It wouldn't stun me. But I don't know if I'd like choose it to put my money on or anything like that.
Sure.
That's kind of how I see it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is what about Perion Winfrey, right? Because he had a good Senior Bowl. Actually, Travis Jones had a great Senior Bowl and had a sack in the game. Winfrey had a couple sacks. I just haven't heard a lot of great things about him from the Bucs. He's not very good against the run. And if you remember,
that's a huge concern.
It is. Khalil Davis was granted, he was a 5th or 6th round pick out of Nebraska, but he was an undersized, quick, athletic defensive tackle, really good times and agility numbers at the combine. But the problem is he did not do enough stopping the run. And it's that I keep coming back to with Travis Jones, is I think that while they'd love to have some interior pass rush help from the defensive tackle spot, they can manufacture that by kicking JTS inside or with a player like Mafe or another player. And if you remember in the last version of our mock draft in the 3rd round, either in the 3rd or the 4th round, I believe, we had another defensive tackle. And this is another name to keep in mind. This is Ioma Iwuazurike from Iowa State. This is another big body, 6'5", 320 pound pass rusher. He had 9 sacks last year for Iowa State. He was the Big 12 pass rusher of the year, and was the 2nd behind Jalen Petrie in terms of getting the number of votes for the Big 12 player of the year. So this is another name to keep in mind. We had him in our mock draft version 3.0. He didn't make it in this one, obviously, with Jones, but there's just not a lot of good defensive tackles. And that's the premise of maybe grabbing one early while you can.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what they do at defensive tackle, because there are so few options, really, especially to fit what they're looking for.
Oh, and John, while you guys were on Thursday talking about Keon O'Neal from the Dallas Cowboys, the new Bucs safety, I was working on the mock draft and actually had Jaquan Brisker from Penn State in the 1st round until they signed Neal. So that's how quickly and fluid this whole process was coming up with this mock draft. It was about to be another safety. If you remember, we had Lewis Seen from Georgia in our version 3.0 as the 1st pick at number 27.
And we do think it's going to be a defensive player. We've kind of narrowed it down to that. We think if Treylon Burks falls, that could be a possibility. I don't think they like a tight end or running back in the 1st round. Quarterback, same thing. They obviously don't think they're going to take one of the 1st round tackle. No, so the 2 positions really are just guard and wide receiver. Those are the only offensive players. If Zion Johnson fell, or if Treylon Burks fell, maybe Kenyon Green too. I don't know. We haven't heard much interest in the Bucs linking them to Kenyon Green. Right. We have with Zion Johnson. So I would say if Johnson or Burks fell, or I don't know if you call it falling. I think both are projected somewhere in the 20s. So if they made it to 27, maybe I don't know if they jump up for either guy. Those could be the offensive possibilities, but we do think it'll probably be a defensive player. You mentioned potentially even a safety. You took Brisker out. But then we've been talking more and more and thinking more and more. And now we're like, man, Todd Bowles, look at the history. I mean, even back to his drafts with the Jets, I mean, which he had a say in for sure.
Todd Bowles played safety in the NFL.
Played safety, loves him. Drafted Jamal Adams in the first round, then Marcus May in the second round. Scott in the same draft. Like he went back-to-back safeties.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, that never happens. And so, and obviously it wasn't totally his call for sure, but he loved both of those guys. I know May was absolutely somebody he pounded the table for there in New York. Adams was kind of everybody in the league loved Adams, to be honest.
Jason Light and the Bucs loved Jamal.
Yeah,
Adams.
exactly. Everybody, would have drafted. So that I think he's gonna, not that he's gonna have a major say in this draft, but the fact that that's a position right now that the future is at least up in the air outside of Whitefield. This year, they could try it out there, but the future. So if they love the player like Lewisine, if he fell, or even potentially a Brisker, although I think first round is too high for him. Yeah, I could see it happening. I don't think it's crazy. Even the first round, I don't think it's crazy.
Well, the other thing too is, remember, Jason Light has drafted some safeties early in the second round with Justin Evans out of Texas A&M, second round with Antoine Winfield Jr., third round with Mike Edwards. So he's all about the safety position. Yeah, Jordan Whitehead in the fourth, and Edwards is in a contract year. Neal obviously signed for 1 year, and keep in mind, just from a body standpoint, right? The Buccaneers really have to replace two safeties this year. Whitehead, they've replaced with Neal. They still have a vacancy, though, at the safety spot after not bringing Andrew Adams back. So
it gets tricky because you don't know if are they counting on Logan Ryan and Ross Cockrell, both of them having that positional flexibility. We don't know that, so that part makes it tricky. They could be too many safeties, or they could have not enough if those guys, they see him as true corners.
John, it's tricky. Just like, which Celsius am I going to pick today, right? That's the thing for me. Today it was the Fuji apple pear.
I've got a little cucumber lime here.
I love it.
Never tried it actually.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
Casey Hudson was saying the other day on the show that she really liked it.
Yeah.
So.
And if you notice the green label on that, it's because it's made with stevia, right? That's kind of one of their different lines, a different sweetener in there. But the great thing is, regardless of which Celsius flavor that you choose, you're going to get a couple things. You're going to get a ton of flavor. It's like they took apples and pears and squeezed them into this can, damn it. And you're also going to get energy galore, and you're not going to get a sugar crash because there's no sugar and there's no preservatives in these bad boys. And they're coming out with all sorts of new flavors.
Yeah,
John, we're dialed into Celsius, and we have people in the chat that are talking about Arctic berry and strawberry lemonade. I haven't even tried these flavors yet, but I can't wait.
Right.
I just was at a convenience store today, though, and I grabbed a couple of colas. I've circled back around to that. I love the fruit flavors, but there you go, the Arctic Vibe frozen berry. Haven't tried that one yet. Can't wait to try it.
Yeah, that one sounds great.
Yep, but there are a ton of flavors to choose from. And Tropical Vibe, Peach Vibe, those were the new ones like last year. Now there's even more flavors to choose from. So the best thing you can do is go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator, or click on our banner ads at pewterreport.com. They'll take you there. And type in your address. You'll see health and fitness stores, grocery stores, convenience stores that carry Celsius near you. Go grab a couple flavors, try them. Once you find the ones that you like, go to Amazon. Buy them in bulk like John and I do. You save money. They ship them right to your door, so you never run out. And you can even get the variety pack on Amazon too. They've got a lot of flavors there you can try. So if you haven't done it, if you've been one of those people that's been curious about it, and you've seen the dozens of people, hundreds of people that have lit up our chat and said they've tried Celsius and they love the flavors, make today the day. Make today the day you try Celsius.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great stuff. No question. Let's get to some of these questions before we move on. This is the one. Any thoughts on the Bucs drafting punter Matt Araiza at any point in cutting opinion? We have laughed about this as a Pewter Report staff because every Bucs fan basically wants this to happen.
Yeah.
And every fan of every NFL team basically wants this to happen, except those of elite punters, because it's a cheap and awesome punter.
Jason Light has drafted 2 kickers, and he's getting crucified for it. I don't know if he's going to go there with the punter or not. On the one hand,
guy's going to get drafted in like the 5th round, maybe even the 4th.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, you ask yourself if that's what you want. It's not going to be one of those late 7th round picks the Bucs have. Which brings me to another great question, though, Scott. Is this? Like, do you really think the Bucs are going to stay put on all their picks?
No.
Like their first 4-round picks. Do you think they will move back and try to
Yes.
add some more picks?
Yeah, there's something about the way Jason Light is wired. He likes to recover picks. It's
Sure.
like a little mental tick or like a little
You can
mental
do
quirk
it, yeah.
that he likes to say, okay, well, I traded a 5th round pick for Shaq Mason. I'd love to get that 5th back. Not that exact 5th, but a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick or whatever. So yeah, I could definitely see the Buccaneers being one of those teams that trades back or tries to trade back. The big question, and I addressed this in today's Peter Report, Bucs Monday mailbag, is I just wonder how much of an emphasis do they put on the 5th-year option, right? Because you're so far back at 27 this year, you can only go back a couple spots before you're out of the first round. And then with your first selection, you don't have the luxury of that 5th-year option. So Jason Light, every year, even when it was Vernon Hargreaves, picked up a 5th-year option. They did it with Vita Vea before they signed him to an extension before his 5th year. They've done that now with Devin White, John. So I just wonder, is that a situation where they're putting so much of an emphasis on staying in the first round? And that's the case. You can only move back a couple spots.
Yeah.
We've never seen Jason Light trade out of the first round before, so it'll be fascinating to see.
Well, and what if maybe he doesn't trade out, maybe he trades back, or maybe it's not the first round, maybe it's the second round, maybe he trades back out or back in the second round. Because you can recoup a 5th or a 4th, potentially even by a move like that. So it will be very much on my radar whether this team is going to move back or not as picks kind of approach. At 27, it's hard for us to say, like, if they were in the top 10, absolutely we would be saying they would trade back. Like, we know they'd be trying to trade back. But if at 27, it really depends how the board falls. But so we're not going to spend like a ton of time talking about it, but just know that it is very much on our radar. And if the draft unfolds a certain way, what you'll do is you'll hear us on our live draft show now that we'll be on that night on the first round. You'll hear us start to talk about that more and more as a possibility. If options that we know are high, the Bucs are high on, start coming off the board, I think the possibility will become greater and greater. The other thing is who will move up, Scott, and especially in a class like this one where I doubt teams are going to really want some of the quarterbacks that are in this class, especially if, as I expect and starting to expect,
they're going to have to like hold their nose
and Pickett. If those guys go top 20, I don't think anybody's moving up for Sam Howell or Matt Corral right now. Like Corral, like I don't think that's happening. So
all right. So you and I have talked a lot. Actually, I think I give you credit because you're the one who kind of started the buzz on Zion Johnson well over a month ago, before even the combine, about this guy being not just a great Buccaneer fit, but also just a fantastic offensive lineman, just a great, like the top guard, right? I agree.
I think I'm higher on him than anybody. He'll probably be in my top 10 players.
So having said that, answer Josh's question, Scott or John, if Burks, Devontae Wyatt, or Zion Johnson are there, and I know you love all three, I do too. As the Bucs, who are you taking? Which one of those guys, if they're all there, are you going to take, John?
So if you look at it just purely in the lens of best player available, Zion Johnson's going to have the highest grade for me at any of these players. So I think that there's something to be said there. Now, the other part of it is the guard is the least important position of all of these positions. Do I think Zion is probably the safest player out of all of them? Yes, I think he's probably the safest player. And I think he's probably going to be my highest graded player. But guard is the least important of those positions, and they have 4 quality offensive linemen, if not elite offensive linemen, without adding a guard to that mix. You should be able to. History has shown us that offensive lines with 4 premium players should be dominant almost regardless of who the 5th offensive lineman is. It really is that, especially when that weak link is a guard. So honestly, even though Zion is probably my favorite player in a vacuum, I probably would be the last one I would pick there for the Bucs if I'm thinking about it purely from a team building strategy, because you should be able to have Hainsey or Stinney in at left guard and have an elite offensive line. Now, you can obviously say you can have a elite wide receiver core, and maybe that's why you don't pick Burks. But there's also the reality, a little bit of unknown with Chris Godwin, and the fact that you can get, when Burks is on the field, the potential for him to make an impact just in a couple plays is pretty high. And the impact he could make is more of a difference in terms of winning or losing than that of what a good guard, assuming Zion, good as a rookie, not elite right off the bat, a good guard would do as compared to an average guard, like a wide receiver that can make explosive plays, even if he's on the field way less than a guard, than a starting guard, is more impactful to winning, numbers have shown us. So that's what would be the argument for Burks. Wyatt, if I knew I could trust the person, would probably be my pick, because I think the Bucs develop defensive linemen well. I think they develop talent well up front. He is clearly immensely talented. They have a great culture. I think he would fit in well there in their culture. So if I knew that none of that stuff was going to be a concern, to me, premium upside, premium position, opportunity to play on a defensive line with other really good players, I think he would be the one I would probably swing on.
Well, you know, John, I'm a defensive guy, right? I'm a defensive line guy. So naturally, you would think that Devontae Wyatt would be my pick, but no, it would be Treylon Burks. The man kills pigs with knives. He hunts wild boars with knives, not guns, not crossbows, not bow and arrow, knives.
Look, I'm not going to be disappointed by any of these, and I definitely won't be disappointed by Treylon Burks. And that story is wild. I know you and Matt covered it last week, but that story was
And the thing too is, I you know, again, part of my draft process is I watch a lot of interviews on YouTube with these players, whether it's after games, you know, during the week, leading up to a game. I watched Treylon Burks's post pro day workout interview with the press, and this guy screams Chris Godwin to me. Just his demeanor, the way he carries himself. He's so team first. Like, say what you want about him as a player. I think if you threw Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, you know, in some sort of like wide receiver making machine, you would get Treylon Burks. He's kind of in between those guys. He's got the thickness of Chris Godwin, the toughness going across the middle. Mike's size, not as tall, 6'3" as opposed to 6'5", but this guy is like a blend of those two guys. But man, personality-wise, watching those interviews, and I've seen a couple now, this guy just screams Buccaneer character, Chris Godwin. So Treylon Burks is my guy.
Right.
He's unique. He's rare.
Decent. I mean, honestly, it would be awesome to have 4 wide receivers like that. You would just go into the season so confident that the pieces you needed offensively were there, especially if Gronk is back. Or even if he isn't, you could fill in the tight end with veterans that are available and just get by at that position because you have options. Vortex asks, basically, do you think Treylon Burks could be used in a Mike Gesicki type role, which is to say as a wide receiver? Which, yes, I think Treylon will be used as a wide receiver because Gesicki doesn't really do anything blind. And that's fine. They find a way to make that work. But basically, I think what Vortex is kind of getting at here, do we see them being able to run things essentially out of 10 personnel and just keep it that way, you know, basically have a running back there and run the ball out of 10 and be very unique in that way. And that's possible. You know, I don't rule out any trends being created year to year. You know, I think that there's some things that are very possible. And obviously Bucs with Burks and Godwin would have some personnel to be able to do some things like that. Gage is a good blocker as well. I mean, it's going to be small though. It's not going to start and become a major part of the offense. You're not going to not run 12 personnel if you're the Bucs because you have Treylon Burks on your team. Will you run it a little bit less? Yeah, you'll run it a little bit less, but you're still going to run 12 personnel. So it's possible, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't still be able to go out and get another tight end still. But
correct.
I mean, just imagine, Scott. I mean, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Russell Gage, Treylon Burks, Chris Godwin, like all these guys healthy together on an offense, obviously be a nightmare for other teams, especially if Burks can acclimate quickly. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I know people will say there will be fans that say it's too much. You don't need it. It's a luxury. And
didn't have Antonio Brown, didn't have Chris Godwin, didn't have Rashad Perriman, didn't have Cyril Grayson in the playoffs.
And at some point, you're just, you know, it's not like they prepared poorly last year. They prepared well. Like they had a good wide receiver room. Like I'm not criticizing them for how they went into last year. They got hit with an absurd amount of injuries.
Correct.
And a guy who had shown a lot of promise the year before, and Tyler Johnson just absolutely didn't show up for the season.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe you put it a little bit on coaching, but I mean, they had 3 of the best wide receivers in the league. A lot of people would have said that was the best wide receiver room in the league.
Yeah. Scotty Miller got hurt and he was not the same player. Jalen Darden was not the player they thought or hoped he would be as a 4th round pick.
Perryman was out twice in like the 7 weeks he was with the team. Like, it's just hard to overcome. They just got crushed. They got crushed, and it happens. But you know, you want to have even better talent this year. Obviously, you know, you're going all in kind of. But Burks is also a long-term, fit, and it would be most crazy because none of those dudes would be on expiring. So you would have everybody would be back again for the next season.
Right. And the thing too is, and I'm not kicking Mike Evans out the door by any means. I love Mike. He's one of my all-time favorite players.
He's finishing his career at the Bucs, man.
Correct. But if you draft Treylon Burks now, right, his 5th year option right? Mike Evans will be 33, and you wonder how much longer.
Option, yeah.
Right. So I'm just saying, it's like you're going to have these guys overlapping, but by the time Burks gets to his second deal, maybe Mike Evans moves on, maybe he retires, etc. So there's
I got you. Oh, sure. I thought you were going to say Mike Evans is a free agent in 2024, but I was like, yeah,
he's going to retire.
Who they draft. Yeah. I think he's coming back. Let's get a couple more questions here because we had a couple good ones, and then we'll tackle the rest of this. We'll keep moving through the 7th rounder. Maybe we'll save our running back evaluations for Wednesday or something like that, or for another day on the show. Some people are regretting the Aurelius Ben pick. I see. I don't know why we're getting questions about Shaq Barrett's trade value here. That's like one of the most important pieces of the team.
Yeah,
I think,
no doubt.
Especially with you need a sure thing, a veteran there. Right. I think a pass rusher for sure.
I want to see him on the right side. That's all. I just want to see him on the right.
Could happen. I don't know what JTS played both sides in college, and we obviously played both sides and then inside last year. So it is. We're not totally sure how that's going to shake out this year, but that could be an option for sure. Let's keep talking about this 7-round mock draft. In the 2nd round, who'd you have?
Second round, we have we addressed the tight end position. Again, if you look at the number of bodies they need, as it stands right now, we think that Rob Gronkowski's coming back. If we think that Ndamukong Suh and possibly Steve McClendon might be back, okay. But as it stands right now, John, this team has Nacho, and they've got Vita Vea at defensive tackle, right, and Benning Potowahi and some other guys. But I mean, that's pretty much it. At the tight end position, kind of the same way, John. Cam Brate, it's going to be 31 in July, and you've got Cody McElroy. Those are your tight ends on the roster right now. So they've got to do something at the tight end position from a body standpoint. That we expect Rob Gronkowski to come back. Sure, that's fine. He's going to come back for 1 year. Brate will end up playing probably a final year in Tampa this year. Then you have nobody at the tight end position hitting into 2023. So this is where it kind of makes sense to look at the tight ends, rounds 2 through 4. Not sure if Trey McBride is going to be there at number 60. I think there's a chance he could.
Yeah,
John, you and I were talking. You and I were talking about the tight ends, and I think you and I are in agreement about this. When you look at the tight end class, there's not that one stud tight end, right? There's a lot of guys that would be really good number 2s in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And
a lot of guys.
Trey McBride is a player that is not huge. He's 6'4", weighed 246 at the combine, 245 at his pro day, probably will get up to 250, 255. He's a scrappy, effective blocker. He's not a dominator at the line of scrimmage, but he does it well enough to where he could be considered a complete tight end. But he's a receiver. 91 catches last year for over 1,000 yards, only had 1 touchdown. But when you go back and you watch the tape, he got tackled at the 1 or 2 yard line like 4 or 5 times. After a 20 or 30 yard catch. So it was just like kind of luck of the draw there. But this guy, reminds me a lot of Jay Novacek from the Dallas Cowboys back in the day.
Yeah,
just a kind of an old school type player, team first guy. Seems like he'd be a good Bucs fit. John, the Buccaneers have brought him in for a top 30 visit. They had a formal interview that you and Matt Matera, PewterReport.com, broke that news at the combine. When asked which teams were showing the most interest in McBride at his own pro day in Colorado State, he mentioned the Buccaneers as one of those 3 teams.
He's a tricky player because he makes a lot of contested catches on tape, but he's not that big. He's not that long, and he doesn't jump that high. Like it's going to be hard for him to continue to catch 91 balls without being able to become a better route runner and create more separation. Right now, it just doesn't really happen for him. He's not really an explosive player, kind of explosive off the line of scrimmage, but not really explosive at the top of his routes. I don't think he's going to separate super well. If he has to beat zone coverage, and I think there's things he can do. Like it's not like he can't be productive. He could be a lower end starter type of tight end, I think. So where do you value that? Is for me, it's probably somewhere in round 3. Will he get to the Bucs late 3rd round pick? Probably not. So if they want him, they got to probably take him with that late 2nd if he's there still. But I've said this to you, Scott. You look at the tight end class, and if you fall in love with one of these dudes, I think you're lying to yourself. I just really do. I don't think that there's anybody worth falling in love with, especially at this position. This position if you have an elite guy like a Kittle or a Kelsey or a Waller or a Gronk, if you have one of those guys, then yeah, it impacts winning. But guess what? If you don't, like, it doesn't impact winning to that degree. So to fall in love with somebody who is just going to be another body, a guy in the NFL, do that in the first or second round, that is where you want to stay away from as a drafting philosophy. You want to make sure you are not trying to fill a need or grab the best player available on the board in a certain class at a certain position if the fifth best player is only incrementally worse than them. And in my estimation, that's what it is. I think there just is not enough difference in this tight end class for me to feel passionately about that being a pick that the Bucs should prioritize, I think. And you're muted, but I'm unmuting you here. I'm trying to unmute you, but you're muted right now. I can't unmute. I think only you have the power on. There you go.
I have the power.
That's right.
Yeah, I use the power myself. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, John. I believe that whether it's Trey McBride, Kate Otten from Washington, Jeremy Ruckert, Jake Ferguson, Jelani Woods. I think there's Daniel Bellinger from San Diego State. Mm-hmm. I think there's a group of guys that are all kind of the same in terms of ability. They have different traits about them. Some are taller, longer, faster, a touch better at this, a touch better at that. But I think it's all kind of one big conglomerate group. Now, the benefit of that is there's a lot of tight ends. It's actually a pretty deep draft of tight ends in terms of quality players, but it's more of that tight end 2, tight end 3 type rather than tight end 1. Like you said, you're not going to get a Travis Kelce. You're not going to get a Rob Gronkowski, who was not a first round pick out of Arizona back in the day. But the Buccaneers need a tight end, so we have them grab Colorado State's Trey McBride. Another player to keep an eye on, though, you mentioned Jelani Woods. He's a very interesting prospect because this guy has got some size. We had him, I believe, in our second mock draft, Peter Reports' second mock draft. He has since risen big time up draft boards. He had a very good combine, had a great East-West Shrine game, really 1-year production, played at Oklahoma State before transferring to Virginia. But this guy, 6'7", he is just
great
unstoppable.
Body. Yeah,
down the middle.
4'6", 140, Scott, 34.5-inch arms, like 82-inch wingspan. I mean, dwarfs the other tight ends in this class in terms of his size and ability. Now, it is somewhat raw, but honestly, there are moments of explosiveness, even as a route runner with him on tape. He needs some work as a blocker, to be honest. But he's blocked for plenty of time. That's what he did at Oklahoma State. It's not like he doesn't know what to do. Right. There's some form things that need work, and he puts in tons of effort. There are moments of good blocking for him on tape. It's not at the level, I think, where it is with McBride and some of these other guys right now, but the potential is much greater because he's so big and so strong. He is the kind of player that you would roll the dice on if you were saying, okay, because there's actually upside there. Whereas, like, it's hard to imagine McBride becoming one of the best tight ends in the NFL and being a guy that influences winning to that degree. Especially as a receiver. Like, I just think that there are limitations there with Woods. If you could get him, and obviously it's still a risk, but if you could get all the kinks ironed out with him and all of that stuff, I mean, you could be talking about a player that it influences winning a little bit more in terms of creating explosive plays, because that's what he did this past year. It's crazy he didn't get to do it at Oklahoma State at all. And then he goes to Virginia and he's able to make some plays down the field. There are clearly good traits there, but again, drops way too many passes. There's still a lot of rawness.
He's a work in progress.
He's a work in progress. I would not want to really take him and make that risk until the end of the third round. If he's there at the end of the third round, Scott, I would love this pick. You and I talked today. We really feel like one of 3 tight ends are a Buccaneer by the end of the first 2 days of the draft. Trey McBride, Kate Otten, or Jelani Woods. We think those are the 3. We know the team has interest in all of them. We know the team has pursued all of them to some degree. They've pursued conversations with all of them, had interviews with them, all of that good stuff. We just don't know who they like the most out of those guys. But we threw Jeremy Ruckert's name in there, Daniel Bellinger's name in there. I think the team there's some interest in those guys. But if I'm guessing what the Bucs board looks like, I think Otten, McBride, and Woods are at the top of that board in some order.
I agree, totally agree. I see it the same way. So we'll see if they do pick a tight end. But John and I are in agreement for sure. Whether it's second round, third round, they'll probably get one there. Again, they need the bodies. They've only got Cam Brate, Cody McElroy, really. So going to our third round pick, boy, this was a player that the more tape I watched of him, the more I really liked him. Nebraska cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt. This is a fun player to watch because he plays with energy and he is a physical, kind of knock you out type corner. And that was one of the most disappointing things when I was doing cornerback draft study, and I really wanted to like Kaiir Elam from Florida. And he's physical against the pass, John, when it comes to covering receivers, press coverage, making plays in the ball. He does that. But Elam is a bystander in the run game, just wants no part of tackling. And it was so disappointing. This guy is the exact opposite. He has some ball skills. He's played slot corner. He's played even some safety. He played most of his snaps this past year and the year prior at outside cornerback. But he has got the ball skills. He's very fast, ran, I believe, a sub 4.4, 4.38, 4.36, somewhere in that range at the combine. And you look at this guy, you watch enough tape, and you're like, he is a Buccaneer corner. He's under 6 feet tall. So he doesn't have that prototype Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis 6'1" size that Todd Bowles likes on the outside. But his arms are just as long as Carlton Davis's. And sometimes when you're measuring a player's height, you have what's called non-functional height, right? Like, for example, Mike Lennon was 6'6". His neck was like 6 inches long. So Mike
but it
Lennon
wasn't functional height.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can see over the the offensive line there.
Yeah.
Maybe it was, but you know what I'm saying? Is sometimes that extra inch or so in a person's height, if it's neck, it doesn't matter as much as it does arm length, right? We were talking today, John, looking at some of the other cornerbacks that they brought in, and the kid from Auburn, he's what, 5'11". He's actually a little bit taller than Cam Taylor-Britt, but he's got the shortest arms of any of the cornerbacks in the draft.
In the league.
Yes. Yeah.
0th percentile.
Right. So that's just one of those instances where trust me, Jason Light was shell-shocked last year. He, John Spytek, Mike Greenberg, having to, spin the wheel of fortune and find another cornerback on the street, right? They brought in so many cornerbacks. D. Delaney had 2 starts, right? Pierre Desir had 2 starts. Not ideal. You had Richard Sherman that was brought in, had a couple of starts. Ross Cockrell saw more action than the team wanted. Right. The Buccaneers were scarred by that last year. They're going to come out of this draft somewhere with a cornerback. They need another one. I know they signed Logan Ryan, but you have Logan Ryan, Sean Murphy-Bunting, who the team is not that high on, and Jamel Dean. Those 3 guys are in a contract year. You re-sign Carlton Davis, that's great. But, John, they got to look ahead to the future here. They need another young cornerback in the hopper. And even if this guy doesn't play anything more than special teams this year, he's there for depth in case something catastrophic happens at the position like it did last year.
And it's funny because we didn't even have – I mean, you didn't have corner until the 3rd round, but we could see it being a defensive back heavy draft in some ways. Like it just – because if they do decide to say, you know what, there's no players here, we can't trade down, we're going to take the guys that we think are going to be the best players in year 2 and year 3 because we don't need anybody to help us right now. But Sean Murphy-Bunting's in a contract year, Ross Cockrell's in a contract year, Jamel Dean's in a contract year, Mike Edwards in a contract year, Keanu Neal, Logan Ryan. That's pretty much the whole secondary, other than Carlton Davis and Antoine Winfield, are in contract years. You need some long-term solutions. And obviously, some of those players will be back, I'm sure.
Right.
But you need some long-term solutions at corner and at safety. And right now, there's not a lot of those on the Bucs roster, so that we know of, at least right now. So that could be very well their first 2 picks in this draft could be defensive backs. They haven't really gone. I mean, they haven't brought in really made a move for a corner. We heard there was reports they looked into Patrick Peterson. There haven't been really reports about any other veteran corners. I mean, they obviously brought in Ross Cockrell, then in season Richard Sherman, but Cockrell was kind of we need a veteran in this room. We have no 4th corner. And he was, out of the league, honestly, at that point. Right. Nobody had signed him all offseason. Sherman was kind of we're in the injury situation, and it was in season. But in the offseason, they really have not pursued adding, like very aggressively at least, adding veteran corners to this room. They
Correct.
believe that the draft in those kind of contracts are the way to build a secondary. That's clear. They want a Super Bowl with all players on rookie contracts, and they think that that's the answer moving forward. So I wouldn't be surprised, Scott, if it's a first, a second. There's 2 defensive backs picks in a tight end, maybe in the first 3 picks if they feel like they've got Sue back, and that's how they want to build it.
Yeah, and Long Lost Leisure brings up the name Zion McCollum. He was actually in our last mock draft version 3.0 at a Sam Houston State. I like him. He's a tall, long corner, really fits more of that ideal outside mold. But John, it's interesting, right? Because we feel like Jamel Dean, if he can stay on the field, he turned a corner last year, did he not? His play improved, and you've re-signed Carlton Davis. So you're probably, due to salary cap, you're not going to be able to re-sign Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean. So, John, it's interesting, right, that the cornerbacks that they've brought in and they've had some interest in are the guys that are more suited to play slot. You don't want like a 6'2" cornerback in the slot going up against a younger, quicker guy that has got more agility, right, against some long-legged cornerback that's probably better suited for the outside. So Roger McCreary, right, Cam Taylor-Britt, those are players that even though their profile, their production in college was that of an outside, their traits are more of a player that has at least the position flexibility to play on the inside.
Yeah. And early in his career, Cam Taylor-Britt played there some. I don't believe McCreary basically has not played there at all. He is such an odd fit for the Bucs because there's the Auburn thing, but there's the fact that he has not played in the slot. He would have the shortest arms of any corner in the league, which is totally against the physical profile they've drafted against. He didn't really test very well either. And he comes from a completely man coverage heavy team. I think I said this earlier in the pod a few months ago, but he told Trevor Sikkema at the Senior Bowl that this was his first time playing in zone coverage, and it was completely new to him, and he was gonna have a bad week because of it, but hopefully it was gonna help him get better long term, was what he said. It was really funny. Obviously there's one-on-one, so he's still got plenty of man coverage reps to show off there, but it would be a transition for him. Now Dean had some of that, Dean comes from Auburn, and the system was a little bit different. He played a little bit of zone, but it was mostly man coverage for Dean, and he has talked about how that transition was really hard for him, and essentially it's taken several years for him to get to where he needs to be as a corner. So that could very well be the transition we're thinking about for somebody like McCreary. The Bucs have shown interest.
That's right.
Other than the Auburn thing, it is hard for us to see how this fits anything else they've done. So I'm going to believe it when I see it with that one.
John, speaking of projections, right? We all need help when it comes to projecting the future, especially in this topsy-turvy financial market. Well, you know what? The folks at Amuni Financial can help you out.
At Amuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Amuni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
John, we got to get to Colorado, right? Got to get out there and draft maybe Trey McBride, out of Colorado State.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Well, listen, managing your family's wealth means more to Amuni Financial than simply allocating your assets. It means legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts for your kids, and insurance services. There's a lot going on in the world right now. Let the folks at Amuni Financial, they're the experts, guide you in how to avoid some of the financial pitfalls and to help you plan ahead and stay ahead. 40 years of experience in the Tampa Bay area. They will service accounts all over the country. Give Amuni Financial a call, just like I did, 1-800-868-6864, or visit them on the web at amuni.com.
Are we moving to round 4 here, Scott? What's on the radar round 4 in this 7-round mock draft?
Running backs. And, we should note that the Buccaneers had a day 3 type running back in. They've talked to Isaiah Spiller now from Texas A&M. And that's one of the reasons why right there, the guy can catch the ball as well as run. Spiller is a really interesting player. You and I both.
You think he's going day 3? Is that what you were saying there?
No.
Were you
I'm just
implying that Pierre
kind of
Strong
leading into the running back position here. And yes, Pierre Strong. That's
you said
the guy.
day 3, and I wasn't sure if you were getting to Pierre Strong or if you meant that about Spiller. I was curious.
I think Spiller is day 2. I think he is a 3rd round pick, maybe late 2nd, but Pierre Strong is a 3rd day pick. Had really good showing at East West Shrine game. Didn't get much playing time, but the scouting reports from there were very favorable in terms of how he practiced. Big time producer at San Diego State. He's kind of a long-legged guy. Reminds me a little bit of Frank Murphy coming out of Kansas State. I've been trying to think who's this guy.
I don't remember him.
Yeah. He's didn't have much of a pro career, but he's just a long-legged runner. He's got kind of a weird, funky running style, but he's very effective. Can catch the ball. Had a 65-yard catch and run on a screen pass at the East West Shrine game. Bucs have talked to him, and that's somebody on the radar.
Yeah, Zoom conversation with him per Justin Mello of the Draft Network, story up on it at Peter Report right now. But Zoom conversation with him that already happened, and it was led by Todd McNair. So just standard due diligence, I think, more than anything. But watched him anyway to have a feel for him. Wasn't crazy about him. Outside zone scheme runner, that not really the Bucs thing. Great speed when he gets the lane, but he needs the lane, and he got a lot of lanes in the FCS competition. He led the FCS in rushing this past year. 5 fumbles last year, definitely something to note, and is definitely a concern. He is not very laterally elusive or not much of a tackle breaker either, but he is fast, and he will get your pursuit angles off if he gets a little bit of a runway. That's typically not how it works in the NFL, though. You need to create a little bit more for yourself in the NFL. And so there are a lot of running backs I'd prefer. I like this running back class. I've just gotten into it heavy the last couple of days. I really like it. There's probably 5 or 6 guys I'd love to see on the Bucs.
Well,
this is one of those guys. This is the guy you had in the mock.
The guy we picked in the mock. I've come around, folks. I know I caught some flack earlier, but Dameon Pierce, I've watched enough of him. I can see the Bucs fit. He's not a blazer, but this is a tackle breaker. He reminds me of a faster, better version of Peyton Barber. And I know that might make fans, have heartburn or throw up.
No one wants this pick now.
Yeah, I know. No, but what I'm saying,
you did say a better version.
He's a much better version. And what I mean by that is he's thick. He's a compactly built player, built like a bowling ball, tough as nails, but he's more explosive. He's got a very similar jump cut. He's a jump cut runner because he's so big with his lower body. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle, but he's got a good kind of dead leg jump cut that will make people miss. And then the guys that don't miss, John, they just bounce off of him because this guy is a physical, punishing runner. And I think when you're looking at the Buccaneers now, they've re-signed Leonard Fournette. He's the starter, obviously. They brought back Giovanni Bernard. He's more that pass-catching, change of pace, third down kind of guy. Keyshawn Vaughn, still not sure what Keyshawn Vaughn is. I think he's kind of in between both of those.
But it feels like the Bucs like him enough that they'll give him a chance. And he finished last year on a high enough note, not a high note, but a high enough note that I would imagine it's not like Tyler Johnson, for example, where it's like, okay, year 2, we got to question whether he's even part of our roster. I would imagine they see Vaughn as contributing this year, which makes running back very tricky to analyze for the Bucs. Like, do they even draft one at all now? I'm really not sure that they do. I thought that they
wouldn't be surprised if they let this, because they've got their top 3 running backs now, right? I wouldn't be surprised if in our final mock draft, if you saw, because we put some names out there, Tyler Algier from BYU, Dameon Pierce now. I think we have maybe Rashad White was on our first one from Arizona State. They like those running backs, but I wouldn't be surprised in our final mock if we don't forego the running back position until the 7th round. And then you can get a player that is special teams guy, Max Borgi. Yes, exactly. That's kind of who we're thinking about. He's one of our favorites. He's like the Christian McCaffrey light. He's the light version of Christian
because they're the only 2 white running backs in the league.
Yeah, with only 95 calories, you can get Max Borgi for a hell of a lot less than you can, and it's less filling too. Yeah. So that might be the guy in the 7th round. Plus, he catches a ton of passes. I think he had 82 receptions his first or second year at Washington State, something absurd like that. So, but we like the Pierce pick. Why? Because he's a top pass protector. Really showed well at the Senior Bowl. He's a Buccaneer character guy, right? I mean, he just fits what the Buccaneers were all about. Yeah, and I think he's one of those
easy fit. Yeah, very easy fit. You could see it. Pass protects right now. Can improve, and they can do more of it, honestly. A lot of these college backs just didn't do it enough. It's actually probably one of the best pass protecting running back classes I've ever seen. The bar is low for college running backs in that regard, but there's some guys who really do it on tape. I mean, Isaiah Spiller, Breece Hall, absolutely those guys will do it, but Tyler Algier might be the best at that in this class. So there's
He's really good
number of guys that fit the Bucs. We're going to talk about them on another show. I'm sorry, I deceived people and put it on this one. I didn't know how long we would go for this, but we're going to talk about our running back evaluations on another show later this week for sure, because I want to get more in depth with some of these guys and answer some of your questions about them too. But
and then just to round out the picks here, we'll talk about these guys briefly. Then we'll round out with some questions. 7th round, you're just looking for traits, right? And Tarikas Tisdale from Ole Miss. This is a player that the last 2 years kind of marred with injury, but this guy is a physical specimen. He looks like Will Golston, but a much faster version. Ran a 4.63. Okay. And he's 6'5", 285 pounds. So the team has not re-signed Pat O'Connor yet. Will Golston at age 30 is in the final year of his deal. This would be a special teams contributor with that size and speed. You put him on the field goal block unit. You have him run down there, cover kickoffs, and you develop him behind the scenes. But this is a big-bodied traits guy that didn't have the production. I think he had like 3 sacks in 3 years at Ole Miss, but good against the run. You just kind of take a 7th round flyer on him because of the traits, and you hope he can develop. So that's
absolutely wild traits. I mean, 35 and a quarter arms and an 83-inch wingspan. Pretty crazy. We're going to wrap up here, but I do want to mention real quick, Kenneth Walker, easily the best running back. No one is talking about him. I do agree that he's not getting much talk about, and he is very good. Reason we aren't talking about him is Kenneth Walker is easily the least experienced receiver of the top backs in this class and pass protector. He's basically pretty much an unknown in that area, I would say, outside of screens.
12 catches last year?
Yeah. I mean, I like him. He could be a great receiver in the NFL. I don't know that, and I know it about the other guys. So for the Bucs, I just can't see him being above a lot of the other names we talk about more.
Last pick is Dane Belton, who is a Tampa kid from Jesuit High School, went on that local visit, and 5 interceptions last year at the safety position for Iowa. Didn't really play free safety so much. It's that star position. It's that star safety spot that the Hawkeyes play in their nickel defense. So he can do it all. He can blitz the quarterback.
Is he going to be there? I mean, I don't know. I just looked 6 foot, 205, 4.43 40, jumped 36.5. Good broad, good
probably
agility.
Probably a 6th round pick. But
I was wondering. I was wondering. Maybe this is a situation where he's a player that they do target, but maybe it's like if they trade back from another slot and they add a 6th.
Yeah, or it could be a situation they take both their 7s, package up, and move up, and get him in the 6th, right?
Could be some things like that. Yeah.
But this is a local player. The Bucs had him in for a visit. I think there's some interest there. He does fit. He does check a lot of the boxes. He's a versatile player. Can play the run very well, rush the quarterback.
5 picks last year.
Yeah, 5 interceptions.
Runs a 4.40. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch him.
Yeah, and the thing too is this. Iowa. You got the connection there with Tristan Wirfs. John, I've always wanted to ask you, and as I'm cropping these pictures today, I mean, I'm thinking that's the friggin' Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. Do you ever get pissed off as a Steelers guy that Iowa has the same uniform, pretty much?
No, it doesn't bother me, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I've never thought. In fact, when Desmond King was there, everybody in Pittsburgh wanted him because they said he wouldn't have to really switch uniform color. At first, that looked like it would have been a great pick because he was an All-Pro, I think, his second year. But then his career went downhill quickly. But yeah, I think overall that it's easy to see the transition with some of those players for Steeler fans, I think.
John, speaking of great picks, we got a great pick for you. That's our friends over at MyBookie, of course. Listen, baseball season is here, right? And the season's kicked off. MyBookie is your one-stop shop for all sports, right? We've talked about college football, talked about the NFL, of course, NBA, hockey. Now it's baseball season, right? With up to the minute odds in all your favorite leagues, there's never been a better time to start playing with MyBookie. And with MyBookie, it's easy. You bet, you win, and they're going to pay you. Whether you're a diehard or casual fan, simply put, there's never been a better time to start exploring the world of online sports betting with MyBookie. Sign up today at MyBookie. Use the promo code PEWTER to secure your first deposit bonus up to $1,000. It's that simple. Deposit $200 and play with $300 instantly. Just use the promo code PEWTER to claim your bonus. Mobile or on the go, golf. The Masters just finished up. There's more golf events coming up. UFC, no matter the sport, no matter the minute, MyBookie puts the action in your hands with their app so you can turn any game day into payday. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Absolutely. Great stuff for MyBookie and great stuff on the pod. We appreciate you all. Make sure you hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up on your way out. Helps boost our YouTube algorithm. Helps get us to more people. We hit 8,000 subscribers. That was freaking awesome.
You
on our way to 9,000 now. You know, as Belichick say, we're on to 9,000.
We're on the 9,000, well. John.
So make sure you're subscribed. Hit the like button. Let's get ourselves as close to 9,000 as we can by the draft. And the big draft show's coming up. Obviously, we'll be live all 3 days of the draft. Very, very excited about that and excited for y'all to be joining. So subscribe, hit the bell to get the notifications when we go live, and we will see you all tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Thanks so much for listening to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.